King Adeyemi ruled over the prosperous kingdom of Igbra with unmatched authority, yet peace eluded him like mist before the morning sun. His people praised his strength, his warriors feared his command, and his palace shimmered with gold and ivory, but inside, he felt hollow. Wealth did not quiet the ache. Power did not silence the restless dreams that woke him before dawn. The elders whispered that fulfillment could only be found through divine favor, and so the king turned his heart toward the gods of his ancestors. Under a crimson sunset, the royal courtyard filled with chanting priests and trembling livestock. Rams, goats, and bulls were laid before the sacred altar, their blood soaking into the earth as drums thundered. The king watched without flinching, convinced that sacrifice was the language the gods understood. As the final animal fell, a strange wind swept through the palace grounds, cold and sour. That night, for the first time, the polished marble floors beneath his throne felt damp. At midnight, King Adeyemi awoke to a metallic scent hanging thick in the air. The torches in his chamber flickered wildly though no breeze stirred. When he placed his feet upon the palace floor, his soles met something warm. He lifted his lantern and saw a thin red line running across the marble tiles, seeping from the cracks like a wound that refused to close. Servants were summoned at once, and they scrubbed until their hands blistered. By morning, the floor gleamed again, and the king dismissed the incident as an omen of powerful blessing. Yet that night, the red returned, thicker, darker, spreading like veins beneath the palace corridors. As he stood in the grand hall, he heard it for the first time, a whisper beneath his throne, soft but unmistakable. It spoke a name he had not heard in years. Damilola. The name echoed in his skull long after the whisper faded. Damilola had once been a servant girl who vanished during the early years of his reign. The memory struck him like a blade. He had been told she fled the palace, accused of stealing royal jewels. He had not questioned it. Kings did not concern themselves with missing servants. The following night, the floor bled again. This time, multiple voices rose from beneath the stone, overlapping in a chorus of sorrow. Each voice carried a name. Men, women, even children, names tied to disputes, accusations, or disappearances during his rise to power. The king staggered backward, his breath shallow. The priests insisted the gods were demanding more livestock. But deep within, Adeyemi feared the truth. The palace was not asking for animals. It was remembering. Rumors spread among the palace guards that the king no longer slept. His eyes grew sunken, his temper volatile. He ordered fresh sacrifices daily, goats at dawn, bulls at dusk. Rivers of blood flowed through the courtyard drains, yet the palace floor only bled more fiercely at night, as though mocking his efforts. One evening, the chief priest confessed in a trembling voice that the foundation of the palace had once been laid during a time of war. The soil beneath it was said to have absorbed blood from captives taken in secret. "It is old debt," the priest whispered. "The earth remembers what men forget." Adeyemi felt his crown grow heavy upon his head. For the first time, he wondered if fulfillment had never been promised, only judgment. A storm gathered without warning, thunder shaking the pillars of the palace. When lightning struck the central courtyard, a crack split the marble floor before the throne. Blood surged upward like a fountain, staining the king's robes. The whispers became screams, no longer soft but furious, demanding acknowledgement. In the chaos, Adeyemi fell to his knees. Faces formed within the liquid crimson, their expressions twisted in anguish. Among them he recognized warriors executed without trial, rivals buried alive beneath construction stones, and villagers accused falsely to secure his authority. The sacrifices of livestock had awakened something ancient and vengeful. The palace was not bleeding because of the gods. It was bleeding because of him. By dawn, half the court had fled the palace grounds. Guards refused to patrol the halls at night. The king stood alone in the grand chamber, staring at the darkened stains that would not fade. No amount of water could cleanse them. No prayer could silence the murmuring beneath his feet. When the next midnight arrived, the floor did not merely bleed, it opened. A fissure widened slowly before the throne, revealing darkness that seemed alive. From within it came a single unified voice, deeper than thunder and colder than death: fulfillment requires balance. The king understood then that what he sought through animals must now be paid in truth, or in flesh. The fissure before the throne did not close with sunrise. It remained like a wound in the palace floor, breathing faint mist that smelled of iron and rot. King Adeyemi ordered the chamber sealed, but no mason dared approach it. The priests gathered in a trembling circle, chanting verses meant to bind restless spirits. Their voices cracked before the final incantation was spoken. The darkness beneath the stone pulsed as though it had a heartbeat of its own. The voice returned, not a chorus, but a singular presence that filled the hall. It spoke of balance, of debts unpaid. It reminded the king that livestock had never been the true offering beneath the palace foundation. Human blood had consecrated his throne. Fulfillment would not be granted through denial. Adeyemi felt something inside him fracture, the fragile shield of arrogance he had worn for years. Desperate for answers, the king descended into the palace archives, a forgotten chamber beneath the eastern wing. Dust coated ancient scrolls, and the air carried the scent of decay. There he found records from his father's reign, lists of prisoners taken during the wars of expansion. Some entries bore strange markings, symbols drawn beside certain names. Those names matched the whispers from beneath the floor. The realization settled like cold rain upon his skin. The palace had been built atop a burial ground of political enemies. Sacrifices disguised as executions. Adeyemi's own signature marked the later pages. He had inherited cruelty, and perfected it. The foundation of his kingdom was not stone but bones. Queen Mornike had watched her husband's decline in silence, but now she confronted him. In her private chamber, she spoke with calm fury. She had warned him years ago that fear could not build lasting peace. "The earth drinks what you spill," she said softly. "And one day it will thirst for more." That night she walked alone into the grand hall. The fissure shimmered faintly. The voices did not scream at her, they whispered sorrowfully. When she returned to her chamber, she carried a single message: the spirits demanded truth be spoken before the people. Only confession could begin the closing of the wound. Adeyemi gathered his council at dawn. His voice shook as he described the bleeding floor and the voices beneath it. Some called it madness. Others urged stronger sacrifices, perhaps even war captives from neighboring lands. The king felt the temptation rise within him like old instinct. But when he hesitated to confess publicly, the palace responded with violence. Blood seeped through every corridor, flooding servant quarters. A guard slipped and broke his neck. The whispers grew into howls that echoed beyond the palace walls. The kingdom began to hear them. In the markets of Igbra, traders spoke of red mist rising from the palace at night. Children claimed they heard their ancestors calling from beneath the earth. Crops near the royal grounds began to wither inexplicably, as though the soil rejected its master. Fear spread faster than drought. An elder approached the palace gates, demanding audience. He spoke of ancient law: when a ruler's foundation is corrupted, the land itself rebels. "Your throne is hungry," the elder declared. "And it will not stop feeding." The king could no longer pretend the curse was contained within marble walls. At last, Adeyemi stood before his people in the palace courtyard. His crown felt heavier than chains. He confessed to unlawful executions, to secret burials beneath the foundation, to ruling through terror rather than justice. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some wept. Others stared in stunned silence. For a moment, the bleeding ceased. The ground lay still. But as night fell, the fissure widened further. Confession alone was not enough. The voice returned, colder than before, "Truth spoken without restitution is empty." The palace floor cracked again, revealing bones glistening in the darkness below. The crack widened until the throne itself tilted, forcing the royal guards to drag it aside. Beneath the marble lay a chamber no architect had recorded. Lantern light revealed skulls stacked like forgotten offerings, ribs woven into the soil as though the earth had grown around them. The king's breath faltered when he saw scraps of royal cloth among the remains, proof that some victims had been nobles who opposed him. The voice rose again, no longer whispering but resonating from the hollow beneath. "Return dignity." The words echoed through the chamber like a decree. Adeyemi realized the dead did not want more blood, they wanted acknowledgement, burial rites, and justice spoken aloud before the living. At dawn, the king ordered the palace floor dismantled stone by stone. Courtiers protested, fearing instability, but he silenced them. Workers labored in dread, lifting marble slabs to expose the hidden graves. Families gathered outside the palace walls as bones were carried out carefully, wrapped in white cloth. The priests performed purification rites rarely spoken of. Drums beat slowly, not in celebration but mourning. As names were matched to remains through old records, relatives stepped forward in tears. For the first time in years, the king did not sit upon a throne. He stood barefoot in the dirt, watching his crimes meet daylight. Not all welcomed this reckoning. Some nobles feared exposure of their own hidden acts. They whispered in shadowed corridors, blaming the king's confession for weakening the kingdom. A faction plotted to restore strength through silence and secrecy. That night, the bleeding lessened, but did not cease. The fissure glowed faintly, as if waiting. Adeyemi understood the spirits demanded more than excavation. They required transformation. If the same corruption lingered in his court, the wound would never fully close. Summoning courage, Adeyemi convened a public tribunal. Accusations were heard openly. Those complicit in false imprisonments and secret executions faced judgment before the people. Gasps filled the courtyard as prominent figures were stripped of rank and sentenced to exile. As the final verdict was spoken, a tremor rippled beneath the palace. The fissure narrowed slightly, and the metallic scent in the air softened. For the first time since the bleeding began, silence settled over the grand hall without whispers clawing at the king's mind. Queen Mornike dreamed of a river flowing beneath the palace, clogged by stones stained red. In her vision, the river cleared as bones were lifted and truth spoken. She awoke convinced that the land itself needed renewal, not just justice among men. She urged the king to rebuild, not the palace, but the foundation. Move the throne. Let the burial ground become sacred soil rather than hidden shame. Adeyemi, humbled and weary, agreed. In a symbolic act, Adeyemi removed his crown before the people and placed it upon the bare earth where the fissure had been widest. He declared the palace site consecrated as a memorial to those wronged. A new council would rule temporarily while he sought cleansing in solitude. That night, the bleeding stopped entirely. The floor lay dry. The fissure sealed into a faint scar. Yet the voice returned once more, softer now, balance begins. Adeyemi realized fulfillment was never power. It was accountability. True to his word, Adeyemi left the palace without escort, dressed in plain cloth. The people watched in uneasy silence as their once mighty ruler walked beyond the gates. Some felt pity, others relief. The land seemed quieter, as though holding its breath. In the forest outskirts, he built no shelter of grandeur. He slept on woven mats and ate what he could gather. Each night he waited to see if the earth would bleed beneath him again. It did not. Back in Igbara, the palace foundation was transformed. Stones were rearranged into a monument bearing the names of the lost. Families visited with offerings of flowers and prayers. Where blood once seeped, incense now curled gently into the sky. Crops near the palace began to recover. The air no longer carried iron but rain. The kingdom slowly healed, though scars remained in memory. And in the forest, the former king began to understand that fulfillment is not seized, it is earned through restoration. Exile stripped Adeyemi of illusion. In the forest, there were no courtiers to flatter him, no guards to echo his commands. The trees stood indifferent to his former glory. At night, he listened to insects hum and wondered how many lives he had silenced in pursuit of control. One evening, an old hunter recognized him but did not bow. Instead, he offered water and said, "A king without a throne is still a man." The words unsettled Adeyemi more than any whisper from beneath marble floors. He began to see himself not as ruler or exile, but as accountable flesh. Though the bleeding had stopped, unease lingered in the kingdom. Some believed the curse merely slept. The temporary council struggled to maintain unity without the singular force of a monarch. Disputes arose over land, trade, and succession. At the sacred ground, a faint crack reappeared, not bleeding, but visible. The priests interpreted it as a warning: healing must continue. Justice was not a single act but a sustained commitment. The land, once wounded, would always remember. A young girl named Saad began claiming she could hear murmurs when she stood near the memorial stones. Unlike before, the voices were calm, almost protective. She described them as ancestors watching rather than accusing. The elders listened carefully. Children were believed to carry sensitivity to the spirit realm. If the dead no longer screamed but whispered peace, perhaps balance truly was forming. Yet Saad also warned, if lies return, they will rise again. Queen Mornike took leadership within the council, advocating reforms. She established transparent courts, ensuring no accusation went unseen. Records were kept publicly, preventing secrets from festering beneath stone. Farmers reported stronger harvests that season. Rain fell steadily, neither scarce nor destructive. The kingdom began to associate honesty with prosperity. The lesson etched into memory: blood hidden corrupts, truth revealed restores. In the forest, Adeyemi dreamed of the fissure reopening, not in marble, but in his chest. From it poured not blood, but light. He awoke with tears on his face, understanding that redemption required active service. He returned to villages once harmed by his decrees. Without revealing his identity, he worked alongside farmers, repaired wells, and listened to stories of loss. Each act felt like stitching a tear in unseen fabric. Back in Igbra, remnants of the old guard grew restless. They believed the kingdom weakened by humility. Secret meetings resumed, and whispers of reclaiming authoritarian control circulated. One night, the crack at the memorial darkened faintly. Saad felt the shift immediately. The spirit stirred, not violently, but alert. The balance was fragile. Queen Mornike uncovered the conspiracy before it matured. Rather than executing the traitors, she exposed their plans publicly. Shame replaced fear as consequence. The people rejected secrecy outright. That evening, the crack at the sacred ground faded once more. The air felt lighter. Even the elders admitted they sensed approval from the unseen realm. After a year, Adeyemi returned to the outskirts of Igbra, not to reclaim the throne, but to visit the memorial. He approached barefoot, kneeling before the engraved names. No blood rose. No whispers accused. Instead, a breeze stirred gently, and Saad smiled from a distance. "They are quiet," she said. "They are resting." The council offered Adeyemi restoration as king, believing his transformation genuine. He declined absolute rule but accepted a restructured role, limited by law, guided by counsel. His new crown was simpler, forged without gemstones. It symbolized responsibility, not dominance. The throne was placed on new foundation stones laid far from the burial ground. Years passed without blood beneath the palace floor. The sacred ground became a place of teaching. Children learned of the time when silence bred horror and truth restored peace. Adeyemi often stood before the memorial at dusk. Fulfillment had come, not through sacrifice of others, but through surrender of pride. And though the earth no longer bled, its scar remained visible, a reminder that power built on bones will always crack. Peace settled over Igbra like steady sunlight. Trade routes reopened, neighboring kingdoms renewed alliances, and the people spoke of the dark season as something survived rather than ongoing. The palace, rebuilt on cleansed soil, stood firm without tremor or stain. Yet Adeyemi never allowed comfort to numb him. Each month he walked to the sacred ground, kneeling among carved names. He spoke them aloud, ensuring memory did not fade into convenience. The earth remained silent, but silence, he had learned, could be sacred rather than ominous. One dry season, a traveler arrived from a distant northern territory. He brought news of a kingdom where rulers silenced dissent through secret burials beneath their fortress. The story chilled Igbra's council. The stranger asked why Igbra prospered despite its past. Queen Mornike gestured toward the memorial. "We chose exposure over concealment." The traveler lingered long at the sacred ground, listening as wind brushed engraved names. Though years had passed, Adeyemi occasionally dreamed of the fissure. In these dreams it did not bleed, but shimmered faintly, reminding him of fragility. Power, he realized, was a constant negotiation with conscience. He awoke one dawn with a deep understanding. Redemption is not an event but a discipline. Without vigilance, corruption seeps quietly back into foundations. Saad, now older, continued sensing subtle spiritual shifts. She no longer heard voices but felt warmth when justice prevailed and chill when secrecy threatened. The council respected her intuition, not as superstition but as moral barometer. One evening she stood at the memorial and declared, "They are not watching in anger anymore. They are guarding." The idea transformed how the kingdom viewed its past, not as curse, but as warning turned protection. A neighboring chief was captured for plotting against Igbra. In earlier years, execution would have been swift. Instead, Adeyemi insisted on transparent trial and negotiated peace rather than bloodshed. As the verdict of exile rather than death was delivered, rain fell gently across the palace grounds. The people whispered that the land itself approved mercy. The chief priest who had once trembled before the bleeding floor fell ill with age. Before his death, he confessed his complicity in early sacrifices. Adeyemi forgave him publicly, acknowledging shared guilt. The priest was buried beside the sacred ground, not hidden but honored with honesty. That night, the wind moved softly through the memorial stones without disturbance. To ensure history would never be buried again, Igbra established an annual festival of remembrance. Stories of injustice and restoration were retold openly. Children performed plays reenacting the night the palace bled. The festival replaced fear with education. By confronting horror through storytelling, the kingdom weakened its power to return. One afternoon, a minor fracture appeared in a courtyard tile of the new palace. Panic rippled briefly through servants who remembered the past. Adeyemi knelt calmly and examined it. It was merely weathering from heat and time. He ordered it repaired openly, laughing softly at how fear lingers longer than wounds. Memories stirred uneasily among elders. Rather than conceal the matter, Afolabi summoned investigation immediately. Transparency moved swiftly through the system his father had helped build. The sacred ground remained silent, but attentive. The governor's crimes were exposed publicly. Victims were freed, and restitution provided. Afolabi addressed the kingdom openly, reaffirming that no ambition justified hidden cruelty. That night, Saad, now an elder herself, stood at the memorial. She felt no chill, no whisper. Instead, she sensed steadiness. The balance endured. A historian began compiling a detailed account of the Bleeding Palace years. He refused to romanticize it, documenting both horror and reform. Copies were distributed across neighboring lands. The story of Igbra became cautionary legend, proof that even the darkest foundation could be rebuilt if truth prevailed over pride. Decades passed without supernatural sign. Children grew up hearing the tale as distant history rather than lived trauma. The palace floors aged naturally, marked by time but never by blood. Elders would sometimes stand quietly upon the marble, listening. They heard nothing, only the rhythm of their own breathing. The silence had become sacred. One harsh year, drought struck Igbra. Crops failed, and whispers of divine displeasure returned nervously. Some feared the past had awakened again. But investigation revealed environmental causes beyond governance. Aid was organized openly. The people remembered, not every hardship is curse. Wisdom replaced superstition. As generations grew, new stones were added, not for hidden victims, but for leaders who upheld justice faithfully. The sacred ground evolved from a site of shame to one of aspiration. Young rulers from neighboring lands visited to learn from Igbra's transformation. The lesson remained clear: concealment breeds haunting. Confession breeds healing. One twilight, long after Adeyemi's passing, Saad dreamed of him standing beside the sealed fissure. In her dream, he did not appear burdened, but peaceful. "Guard it well," he said gently. She awoke and walked to the memorial. The air was calm. She sensed no unrest, only continuity. The whisper had become blessing. On the 50th anniversary of the Bleeding Night, the kingdom gathered in remembrance. Prince Afolabi, now aged himself, addressed the people. "Once, our palace floor bled with hidden guilt," he said. "Now it stands upon truth." The crowd responded not with fear but with unity. The earth beneath Igbra no longer carried unpaid debt. A young boy once asked why the palace bled only after livestock were sacrificed. The elders explained that the animal's blood stirred what human blood had concealed. In seeking fulfillment through ritual, the king had awakened buried injustice. The boy nodded thoughtfully. "So the earth was not cruel," he said. "It was honest." The simplicity of his understanding pleased the elders deeply. The sacred ground became part of royal education. Future leaders studied it before assuming office. They traced engraved names with their fingers, feeling history carved into permanence. In doing so, they learned that power untethered from conscience inevitably cracks foundations, sometimes literally. Architects renovated the palace again decades later, strengthening its design. Workers dug cautiously, respecting the land's past. No bones surfaced. No blood seeped. The foundation stones rested upon cleansed soil. The kingdom trusted the earth once more. Travelers from afar spoke of Igbra as a land that survived its own haunting. Songs were composed about the night the palace floor bled and the dawn that followed confession. What once was horror had become heritage, a reminder that redemption is possible even for kings. Memory never vanished entirely. Elders warned that forgetting would be the true danger. Each generation carried the story carefully, ensuring it did not fade into myth detached from responsibility. The earth remained still, but vigilance remained alive. Where Adeyemi once sought fulfillment in dominance and ritual sacrifice, Igbra now defined it as collective well-being. Prosperity meant justice, not conquest. The gods, if they watched, required no blood, only balance. The faint scar where the fissure once split marble was preserved rather than erased. Visitors often knelt beside it, contemplating the thin line between glory and ruin. The scar had become guardian, proof that exposure of darkness can prevent its return. On certain quiet nights, wind moved softly through palace halls. It no longer carried whispers of accusation but echoes of history acknowledged. Those who listened carefully felt gratitude rather than dread. Igbora's rulers swore an oath never to build upon hidden graves, literal or political. Transparency became woven into law, culture, and ritual. The covenant between crown and earth endured, stronger than stone. The legend of the Bleeding Palace remained etched in collective memory. It told of a king who sought fulfillment through sacrifice, only to discover that the true debt lay beneath his own throne. The palace floor never bled again. Yet its lesson endured: when power buries truth, the earth itself will speak. And when truth is honored, even the deepest wound can seal, leaving not horror, but wisdom beneath the stones.